welcome to PM Express tonight. You've watched it all day. You've listened to it on Joy FM and myjoyonline.com. Let's talk about it a bit more. The school placement for sale, fixing a broken system. That's what we're going to be talking about, focusing a bit more on the solutions to this particular problem. And why is this important? Because there's so many very underprivileged people across the country who want their children to simply go to school, right? They struggle to get them up onto the junior high school level. They finish, and they're now being asked to pay just so their children get into the senior high school. This, many say, defeats the whole purpose of the free SHS program. And that's why this is such a critical matter. Once it affects you, it affects all of us. 8 persons have so far been arrested. Suspects were found to have links, we understand, with the education ministry. So one of the key things that had emerged since this whole story broke is precisely that. Now, if you remember, the computerized system was introduced so that it will eliminate corruption in the placement process, because before this, the computer wasn't involved. So human beings were determining where your children will go to school. And because of that, there was a lot of errors, but also manipulation. That's why they introduced it. The protocol system then was also introduced, right? It used to be 30% quota for communities within the catchment area of the school. And then this, when the protocol came in, the protocol system was now 10%, but shared equally between the Ministry of Education and the schools, right? And this is what the Fourth Estate investigators found. You just watched a documentary just a short while ago. They found that 10% quota system apparently is what is being abused. So for some of the students who got admitted to originally to a PAM senior high school, for example, the parents who could afford were now getting them to go to a grade 8 school like Infantiman. And then the people were now taking advantage of that process and asking them to pay monies to place them, $7,500. Now, the key question to ask yourself is, so if this person got admission to a PAM senior high school, and somebody also, by the way, also got admission into Infantiman, because there are a finite number of places in Infantiman, this person that pays $7,500 will take the place of somebody in Infantiman. What happens to the person who actually qualified and was placed without any interference, without any influence, without any inducement to Infantiman? What happens to that person? That's the big unknown, and that's why this conversation is important. People were paying as much as 11 to 20,000 cedis just to get their children into the Wesley Girls Senior High School, Wegehe. That is why this is a critical matter to look at. And then we found also that in 2022, the ministry ordered an internal investigations into this, because this is not the first time it's come up. In fact, this was supposed to have commenced on 21st of June 2022 and ended on 29th of July 2022. The question to ask is, what happened of that internal investigation? Because a committee was put together under the authority of the minister to look into this. If that had happened, Manasseh and the Fourth Estate would not have found the need to do this particular probe. So we'll get to the heart of what happened to that investigations. But the immediate past Director General of the GES was the first to blow the whistle on this and asked the CID and the National Investigations Bureau to look into the matter, former BNI, to look at, because he found that the system was being manipulated. People were being asked to pay monies. It's now become cash and carry when it wasn't supposed to be so. The real reason why they were introducing placement system was to take that out of the equation. And so he filed the report and asked the CID and the NIB to look into this particular matter. Again, what happened after that investigations was launched by the CID? It's anybody's guess. In that documentary, you found what happened. Manasseh and his team found that some, big individuals got intervened in the matter, and the CID went nowhere with it. The education minister has spoken to them, and he says his goal is to ensure placement is fair and based on merit, and that the corruption in the system is dealt with, and that he is willing to get the agencies involved to investigate the matter properly and get to the bottom of this. But it's a fair question to ask. In 2020, when he set up that committee, that was precisely to deal with this matter. Why didn't that committee do its job? And did that committee submit its report on the 29th of July? We'll get into that. And what did the minister do once that report, assuming that report was finalized and brought to him, what did he do about it? And as you know, individuals were mentioned, top people, including, the people in the education ministry have been mentioned. So the CID was involved. But I'm pretty sure you've heard Manasseh in that report also mentioned, and his team had mentioned, that when it comes to the grade A schools like Infantiman, like Wegehe, only 2 people had the authority and had the access to change the admissions. And that was the education minister himself and Professor Opoku Abankwa, the former director general. And so one of them, the assumption is one of them would have been in the know, because they were the only 2 people with access, with the clearance to make the changes. But as you heard in that documentary, the investigators managed to pay monies to get their, the person that they were paying the money for, the school changed to a grade A school. So if it is not him, it could have been him. And so the point is, it's very easy to find this out, right? He had filed a CID report. He had asked for an internal investigation into the matter. So who did? We'll get into that when we sit down with my guests. They're joining me to have a conversation. We must find a solution to this. The ministry today had made some commitments. We must hold them to it. Commitments have been made in the past, and we went nowhere with it. Let's see if this is the final time we'll have a conversation about corruption in the computer placement system. Join me after the break when my guests are seated. And thanks for joining us here on PM Express. My guest joining me in the studio right now is Kofi Asare. Kofi Asare is the head of, you know him, the executive director of the Africa Education Watch. Joins us in the studio. Joining us on Zoom right now is Dr. Peter Anti. He is the executive director of the XU for Education Studies. Also joining us is Dr. Clement Apak. He is the deputy ranking member, Education Committee of Parliament and MP, Bulls South constituency. We'll be joined by Kwesi Kwarteng. He speaks for the Education Ministry as we get to the bottom of this. We've heard a lot on this, Kofi Asare, throughout the day. And each time we learn more. I mean, we've seen, as I was indicating just before we came on air, what fascinates me is that this has been known for so long. A whole director general writes to the CID reporting that this was happening. The CID picks it up. The CID and then BNI picks it up. Along the way, that investigation is dropped for some reason nobody knows. Manasseh says some powerful person, got involved, so abandoned. And now we've seen a document subsequent to that in June, which I would share because it's so fundamental to this conversation. And I'm getting straight to it because I don't want to belabor the point because all of you have watched it already. We need to get to the heart of finding a solution to this. And I want to read this document because it's so important. Post the CID not doing much on the work, there's a Ministry of Education letter dated 21st June 2022. And it is with the title, Alleged Corruption at Computer Selection Placement Center, Impeding Placement Process, Composition of five-member investigative committee. And it says, I'm reading the whole thing because it's so important to understand why we still have a problem that everybody knew existed, and all the machinery, all the agencies and institutions that must do something about it attempted and didn't go anywhere. Why that is what we want to drill at. The letter says, I refer to a correspondence on the above subject matter from the National Security Minister. So from the start, Kofi, the National Security Minister himself at some point was involved in trying to get a solution to this. He writes to the Education Ministry. Reference number, they mention reference number, dated 8th April 2022. Referred to me and the Special Assistant to the Honorable Minister of Education. And this individual is called Mr. Edward Fiawovi. Is a Chairman, Investigative Committee and Director, Internal Audit. And this is signed by Divine Ayijoy, Acting Chief Director. You know him, right?
Yeah.
Who is he?
He's the acting chief director.
He's still?
Yeah.
He's still, okay. So he signed this. So the whole national security minister got involved in April 8th last year, right into the ministry.
don't know, April.
Yeah, April last year. That's what he wrote, right? And to the special assistant to the honorable minister. So you assume that the minister would know that the national security minister was asking for an investigation, an internal one. I continue. By the strength of this referral, we hereby respectfully constitute this 5-member investigative committee made up of the following persons to go into this matter for the attention of government through the National Security Minister, Honorable Albert Kandapa. So this Education Minister's ministry say we are going to look into this, set up our own committee for a National Security Minister. And it's right because the Director General of GES had written to the CID
And NBI.
all of them, and the NBI directly comes under the National Security Minister. So he has a purview to this. Okay. The committee members. 1, Mr. Edward Fiawofi, Chairperson, Convener, Director, Internal Audit, Ministry of Education. Mrs. Matilda Iwia Azuama, Head of Legal. Mr. David Pra, Deputy Director General, TVET Service. Mr. Bafo Iwa, Director, Pre-Tertiary. Mrs. Cynthia Stoftego, Head Legal, Ghana Education Service. And Mr. Patrick Arthur, Principal Planning Officer, Ministry of Education, Secretary to the Committee. 4. Furthermore, the terms of reference of this committee shall include the following. 1. To investigate into the allegations of corruption at the CSSPS during the 2022 Senior High School SSS placement period of Basic Education Certificate Examination candidates into first year of Senior High School. Same thing that in Manasseh was investigating, corruption. 2. To submit its findings and recommendations to the Honorable Minister of Education for onward submission to the National Security Ministry for necessary action. 3. To ascertain on any other matter relevant to the issues that may be related to this subject matter, if any. 5. You are respectfully requested to commence work immediately. Submit your report through the undersigned for onward submission to the appropriate quarters by close of work Friday, 29th July 2022. It ends. The ministry's doors are open for any logistical and resources required by the committee for this very important national assignment. Signed, Divine Awojue, Acting Chief Director for Minister. Copied, Honorable Minister for National Security, Honorable Minister for Education, Deputy Minister TVET, Deputy Minister GE, Director General GES, Director General TVET Service, Director Finance, Director General Administration, Members Investigative Committee. Kofi, were you aware of any of this?
I must admit that I've not been aware of this investigative process that was initiated at the ministry level. But I must indicate that I am happy that at least government was concerned about the issues raised by the then Director General, for which he initially petitioned the CID and then the NIB. I am happy because the impression that was created publicly was that those two processes requested by the then Director General had been discontinued. But fortunately, there was another process to actually continue and take the issue further, given the interest shown in the text of this letter by the Minister for National Security, because this is an issue that concerns the credibility and the systems of the state. So I'm happy this initiative was made, but I am surprised that stakeholders like us were not or have not been aware of these proceedings. I'm saying stakeholders like us because we have also been concerned at Edwards about the proper functioning of the CSSPS, because we appreciate why the system, was birthed. And so when there are concerns, we receive concerns from parents and school authorities and all that, including government agencies about issues emerging from the angle of effectiveness and equity, then we are concerned. So we actually requested from the CSSPS we made an RTI request to the Director General of the GES, requesting for the placement data to enable us to undertake an analysis. Our concern was actually the 30% allocation for public basic students.
The quota?
The quota. We wanted to be sure the extent to which we have been giving public basic school students their 30% in the category A schools. It was an equity analysis. It was denied. We petitioned the ministry, it was denied. As I speak, we are still engaging the RTI on the next step after this was denied. We wrote that letter just around this time. You understand? So we also were interested.
On the back of that time, the Director General had already sent us his petition for the investigations.
Just around the time the Director General raised issues, we received a lot of petitions.
Okay.
And our interest as, if you like, a proper institution was to ascertain the extent to which the provisions for the poorest within the system, public basic school students, were being protected. Because the government had provided 30% protocol for junior high school candidates who attended public basic schools.
And that was important because you also want to establish if there was corruption, and National Security Minister is concerned there was corruption, so they want to get to the bottom of it. You also wanted to make sure that those poor basic schools, for which reason we gave them 30%, some rich guy is not taking advantage of those poor folks and inserting their rich kids in there because they cannot pay money.
To be honest with you, we do our program planning before the beginning of the year. So by November 2021, we had done our program planning. So we didn't envisage that there was going to be any issue emerging negatively about the CSSPS. Per our program planning, it was an equity and inclusion analysis of the CSSPS. So we only planned that let's subject the CSSPS, the placement policy, which provides 30% protocol to public basic school candidates.
To see if it's happening.
See what has happened.
Because are you meeting the policy objectives?
Exactly. That was our only intention, because at that time we had no idea about whether anything like what happened.
So you have been denied? So you still haven't been able to determine that?
We are still engaging the RTI Commission on the next step. So the last letter we received from the RTI Commissioner indicated that they were engaging at the RTI board level also to see the action that they're going to take. Because we believe that having access to such documents helps us to conduct research and advise government on how best to improve its own policy.
But it also brings transparency to the issues.
Yes, to improve its own policy's effectiveness through transparency.
Let me bring in Dr. Peter Anti. Ms. Anti, so the letter I read, right, there are a few fundamental questions that needs clarity. First of all, this committee, the evidence says, was set up. If it was set up with a mandate to investigate alleged corruption in CS's placement, was the report completed? Was the report submitted to the minister? What did the minister do about it? And why are we still having the problems if they did something about it? Give me your take on this letter, Dr. Anti. Please unmute for me.
Sure. Thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers and my co-panelists. I think that if the impression that's being created, as alluded by my friend Kofi, is that the investigations that needed to have commenced by the NIB and then the CID were later on taken up by the Minister for National Security, then we need to find out if that particular investigation was concluded, and if it was concluded, what was the content of that particular document that was produced. That is the only way we'll be able to ascertain that the desire to get to the bottom of the complaints that were raised by the DG then were the same reason that necessitated the investigations that was called for by the Minister for National Security. So that is my first take on this. We need, if we want to fix this system, we need to get to the bottom of this. Of course, because one of the prominent objectives of this policy was to ensure transparency, fairness in the allocation of applicants to senior high schools on the basis of merit. So if at the end of the day, the system itself is being corrupted and people are abusing the system, and if you read all research works that have been done on the placement system, they mention the challenge of corruption, human interference, and all those things. They mention it. Up to just this investigation, we had not had anybody coming out with rare evidence of this case. So as at now, we are fortunate to have something to hold on to, and I believe that by the call from the Ministry of National Security, we should get to the bottom of this. And how do we get to the bottom of this? We need to get the documents published. I mean, that investigation that was carried out internally and that was called for by the Minister for National Security. We need to get it published because, interestingly, throughout Manasseh's investigation, nobody at the Ministry of Education was mentioned or was caught. Nobody at the Ghana Education Service was mentioned or was caught, and nobody at the Free Senior High School Secretariat was mentioned or caught. So are we saying that these things are carried out by people external to these three agencies? I don't believe that is the situation. So there is certainly people internally who are colluding with other people to perpetrate this kind of fraud on the innocent parents and students who would want to access secondary education in Ghana. And to do that, and to be able to get the needed response and fix the system as we are calling for, we need to get that report published, and we need to get to the bottom of this and know who are behind those who... Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
And need to know those who are behind those who are doing these kind of corrupt activities, especially those within the ministry and those within the Ghana Education Service.
Okay. Thankfully, Mr. Kwesi Kwarteng speaks for the Education Ministry, is with us. Mr. Kwarteng, so what clarity can you give us on this investigative committee that was supposed to have commenced immediately on the 21st of June, 2022, and ended on Friday, 29th July, 2022?
Thank you, and a very good evening, and the rest of the panelists. Before I proceed with that, I think it's important that I take the opportunity to commend the Fourth Estate team, particularly Manasseh Zuri himself, who led the investigations. They've done a very yeoman's job, because what they've done apparently is going to help us to be able to strengthen the system that we have. Of course, whatever is happening is not very alien to the Ministry of Education. Broadly, any system where you have some form of human interface also operating in it is usually fraught with some of these challenges. You may not want to justify with examples, but of course, if you go to, for instance, the passport office, the DVLA office, the port, you may have some of these challenges. And so his piece, the minister has given assurance that we are going to study it. Of course, even if it has to do with collaborating with themselves and other state institutions, for instance, the security agencies, we will collaborate with all of them like we have always been doing to make sure that we get to the bottom of it. At the same time, I think we have to use the opportunity to again caution prospective students, parents, and the entire or the general public, of course, to be wary of some unscrupulous individuals who may promise them heaven, whilst they themselves may not even have the license to salvation. There are also instances where indeed people promises heaven, and just like the documentary proved that indeed they have been able to deliver the heaven. But I believe that we as a people need to understand the placement system and the placement regime. And I'm of the view that if we understand what goes into it, yes, we will be able to admit that those challenges are something that indeed, can come up. But of course, it's about how we address it. That could probably, make a case of whether indeed an element of corruption can be sustained or not. And then, I mean, back to your question. Yes, I have just spoken with the chief director of the ministry, who happens to be the writer of the letter, the said letter. And then the feedback that I have is that indeed a committee was commissioned to investigate internally, I mean, the issues, some of these issues that has been raised, because like I indicated, this is the first time we are witnessing such challenges within the placement space. The committee had finished their work. There were some recommendations that came up, but of course the committee was not working in isolation. They were also working in collaboration with other state institutions, because I mean, even if we look at Manasseh's video, for instance, there was some element of criminality in it, I mean, allegedly, because some people were arrested. So at some point the committee was working with the police, the committee had to work with the national security, the committee had to work with the Ghana Education Service, and even the Ministry of Education themselves. They came up with some recommendations. Of course, some can be public, some I cannot share them here because of the nature of how classified the document is. But I'm sure, I mean, the RTR currently permits, so with the right processes, we should be able to get the full details of the report. But I mean, some of the recommendations are quite interesting. And it points to what Manasseh was saying, that indeed you could have some people that probably have been aiding the process. But it all takes us back to how the process runs, because you have...
I mean, so it's because now we have clarity. I mean, because we're all asking the same question, did this happen? So we've answered the first one, which is that the committee was actually set up and they did the work.
Yeah, they did the work.
So the committee...
The report is actually ready.
I mean, so the committee gave a specific timeline, 29th July 2022, and it says submit its findings, recommendations to the Minister of Education. Were the findings given to the Minister of Education?
Yeah, the findings were obviously given, but I mean, you know how committees do work, especially when I've explained that they were not working in isolation. At some point, they had to rely on certain information coming from other state agencies. I mean, the update that I just had was that even at some point, they needed some information by one of the security institutions that I shall name or mentioned, at least for now. And it was some kind of it took some time for them to get it. So obviously, they went beyond the time that the committee was supposed to work within. So it took quite some time.
I mean, but
what is most important is that they worked.
And it's done.
Ready.
The minister had Monisi ready. I mean, because remember that
obviously, I mean,
July 29. We're talking about almost 6 months now.
Yes.
I mean, so July 29 was supposed to be the deadline. So the minister definitely, before the commencement of this year, has this report.
Obviously.
Okay. And the follow-up question then becomes, in this report, in terms of the terms and reference, quote, to submit its findings and recommendations to the minister for onward submission to the National Security Minister for necessary action. It begs the question, has it been forwarded to the National Security Minister, and what the Minister of Education himself, who I guess presides over the challenge, what has he done about it till now?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that there were some recommendations from the committee. And of course, some of the recommendations borders internally, decisions that even the Minister for Education himself must take. There were other decisions that also had to, you have to rely on other institutions like national security, the police, and what have you. GS also had their role to play. But I mean, the point is that the report is ready. The Minister for Education have the report. And all consequential decisions within the report will be communicated, like I indicated.
But has he implemented any of it? It's been 6 months, close to 6 months since the work was apparently done.
Yeah, the work was not done within the time frame.
So there was they elapsed the time a bit.
Exactly, because I earlier on explained that they had to rely on other state institutions with regards to certain information that they needed. So the report was not finished, I mean, within that 6 months that we may want to calculate. But I can confirm, at least for now, that the Minister for Education, the report has been ready.
I mean, I asked that because the minister was spoken to in this documentary.
Yeah.
And from everything we've heard, maybe Manasseh didn't include it. But I checked with Manasseh, by the way. Manasseh says he didn't specifically know about this report. It was mentioned, but never saw it. The minister not once mentioned that have actually had a report on what you just did, and I'm implementing it. He talks in general terms. Now he's saying, I'm committed. He's talking about what he plans to do. So that raises, I mean, it's just curious. I'm curious why that will be the minister's answer when he has in his possession a report that he himself and the National Security Minister had collaborated to do that addresses the problem, but he never talks about it.
No, I mean, context is very important. Obviously, depends on what Manasseh probably asks of him. And generally, what the minister said today and earlier on when Manasseh interviewed him was about broadly the interventions and the steps that he has been taking. I'm not sure the expectation was that he was supposed to limit himself to a particular document, because indeed, this is not the first time that we've taken any action when it comes to the CSSPS issues. I mean, you have heard of arrests in the past. I'm not sure the expectation was that the minister was supposed to highlight every action that has been taken up on this whole, I mean, issue that is coming up. So per this logic, what it meant was that the minister was supposed to probably state a report or whatever they did in 2018, 2019, 2020. Obviously, you expect the minister to address the issues generally. I mean, the commitment to it, the extent.
I mean, but you know, because this is the very latest probe that he would have received on this matter.
Yeah, but that's something.
Would have given him direct description of the problem and with recommendations.
But I mean, was the question specifically asked on that, whether or not he's received a certain report the previous year? That was not what Manasseh asked. You understand? So you had a minister who generally was addressing the basic concerns. What is the basic concerns? The basic concern is that at the end of the day, we caution the public and sensitize them on the need not to fall to these unscrupulous individuals. Again, we admitted a certain gap, a certain loophole, a certain challenge, and we admitted that indeed that challenge ought to be resolved, of course, through the collaboration with relevant state institutions. Indeed, you even mentioned that the reports were supposed to be given to the, how do you call it?
For onward submission.
If we are to go by the details of this letter, then the expectation was that it's not the Minister for Education who was supposed to take decision on it. So why should he be the one to be probed on the report and then giving answers on it? But for me, I mean, that is not probably what is the thrust of it. The thrust of it is that an investigative piece have again highlighted an existing challenge. A challenge where generally, I mean, is happening within almost every sector. The Ministry of Education, particularly the CSSPS Secretariat, and what we do is not exclusive. And that's why I even wanted to take the opportunity to explain.
Yeah, I'll come to that. Let me just get out this quick thoughts on this. I still have with me Dr. Clementa Park. Hello, Doc. Hello, Dr. Park. Please unmute for me.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, yes. I mean, so now we have some great clarity from Mr. Kwarteng that yes, the investigative committee was set up, did its work, did recommendations, handed over to the minister. Give me your thoughts on this.
Well, first of all, I think that it comes as a surprise to many of us that an investigative committee was set up to look at this matter internally. On the face of it, that ought to be something positive. But I find it very strange that in spite of that committee's work, we have not heard publicly with regards to the outcome of the work of the committee and whether or not persons who have made it a habit to profit from a system that is supposed to ensure fairness and equity being held accountable. So once we don't have any evidence to show that the work of the committee has led to the apprehension or has led to the uncovering of those who have been perpetrating this deed, I still have a lot of reservations about what we have been told so far. And I equally find it rather strange that is part of the engagement between Manasseh and the minister could not voluntarily on his own have indicated that indeed the committee had done its work and that he had seen a copy of the report, albeit the letter indicating that the outcome of the committee's work was supposed to go back to the National Security Minister. So I think this revelation about the committee and its work actually raises a lot more questions than it proffers answers.
Kofi, you agree?
Well, I haven't seen the report of the committee. I wasn't even aware until now that there was any such committee. And yes, the intentions on the surface obviously is a good one because you want to unravel what the undercurrents are in respect of the DG's complaint or other complaints that may have been made at the ministry level. But you see, this is not the first time we are having inquiries in the CSSPS. In the past, we've seen departmental inquiries when there are issues, administrative inquiries. So I think they are okay. But they are very, very, very restricted in scope, administrative in nature, and not expansive, not reform-oriented, not even designed to elicit broad-based, public opinion or stakeholder opinion about the entire systemic reform. The issue we are discussing is a symptom. It's a symptom of systemic deficits. The issue we are discussing didn't start today. 12 years ago, people were selling admission slots. It's not a new issue. So any keen observer, any objective analyst of the system will appreciate that commissioning an administrative inquiry of people lower than the minister obviously will only inure to an internal administrative benefit, but not an overhaul or a review of the system. Because for you to appreciate how the value chain works, you understand, you will need external actors to participate in such.
When you say external actors, define it.
External actors like people at the school level, parents, stakeholders, journalists, people who have been working around this, you understand, to give you an idea about what, in their opinion, are the enablers, of these allegedly corrupt practices. But if you limit it to an administrative action, then what you do is that you are perfectly addressing the symptom of a problem without attempting to appreciate the cause, let alone solve the problem. Because the system you're running is simply premised on the fact that there was corruption in the distribution of placements at the school level. And in our bid to rid corruption of the system, we deployed technology and centralized it. But that hypothesis is something I've always had a problem with in the public service specifically, generally, but specific to the CSSPS. Because my hypothesis is that it is not entirely true that by digitizing administrative processes and centralizing same, you eliminate corruption. It is not true.
Yeah, but the evidence has proved you right over time then.
And I have a friend who always says this. He's a systems engineer. He always tells me this, that if you digitize a system and you put a corrupt person behind the system will be corrupt. The digitization doesn't...
You get what you put in.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
So I was looking at people at the Ministry of Education and other stakeholders taking a 360 view. I'm saying people at the Ministry of Education because they've been there for years, over 15 years, and they've seen many other issues emerge or arise from the placement system.
So this is what 2005 we introduced this.
Yes, 2005 or
Yeah,
so.
and this problem has been there every year.
There's nothing new.
And the problem has not been fixed. Let me bring in, before I come back to you for substantively, let me get Dr. Anti on that. Doc, so corruption in the placement has been there for long. Clearly, the ministry knows about it. There's an internal investigation. There's a report to the CID. There's a report to the NIB. And it's still not being solved. Manasseh's team found further evidence. In fact, I can tell you that in 2020, a parent went public and complained. I think this is possibly the thing that got, the reports filed, that he had paid 3,000 cedis to somebody to, place a child into school and didn't get it. This was Mr. Modi, right? In the letter that he issued publicly. So the problem is known. This is a known problem, Ms. Nancy. So why are we not solving a very known problem and we know who the culprits are, apparently? Hello, Doc.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah, because the commitment is not there. And that is why I feel sad, because we seem to be downplaying this particular challenge. The fact that the challenge has been there over the years, and we know, as we are all claiming now, that we have this challenge of people abusing the system, and we have not taken steps to track these people. And within the ministry, there were attempts to investigate who those people behind this system were. And outside the ministry and in the Ghana Education Service, attempts were made to do investigative or to undertake investigative processes to bring out those who are involved in this. And finally, we have a journalist coming out with a report or an investigative piece to name people who are involved in this. And still we are resorting to the issue of this has been with us all this while, and that we should be okay with it. It means that we don't have the necessary commitment. The leadership of the ministry, the leadership of the Ghana Education Service do not have the necessary or the needed commitment to stop this. And that is what saddens me, because we cannot say that we have been with this for all this while, so of course let's look at it as it is. No, we need to, one, accept that we have to stop this at a point in time, and this is a perfect opportunity that has presented itself for us to speak about this and push that the needed measures are put in place to ensure that we bring this particular problem to its barest minimum, because people are really benefiting from it.
Yeah, and let's go on that with Dr. I said doctor. Because so here's the thing.
Yeah.
We've arrested some people before. We've arrested people again. What I tend to find is that people who are arrested are the
Guru boys.
Guru boys. But the people who actually sit behind the computer, who actually can change, they are seated somewhere. There's somebody with password, with access to the computer at the GES or Education Ministry. Why is the thing focused on the Guru boys when they are the conduit? But the big boys are actually making the changes.
I'm sure it was the more reason why I was pushing to explain how the processes work, because clearly, if you understand how the processes work, I'm not sure it will be that very judgmental and conclusive to only conclude that some way, somehow, if somebody have an access to, let's say, the placement system by default, if things does not go well, it means that the same. I mean, such logic is so simplistic and very unsustainable. Until we understand.
So let's go there because of time.
But of course, I mean, before that, I mean, I just want Peter to understand that nobody has sat here to say that, I mean, we should accept the current status quo.
But obviously, we haven't done anything about it.
I'm not sure that is the case. Kofi Asare has been making a lot of advocacy from day one. If we look at the CSSPS when it was introduced in 2005.
Yeah, but the problem persists.
I'm coming. There has been a lot of reforms. There have been a lot of interventions at every point. I mean,
you've been dealing with the symptoms.
No, even you, when you started your presentation, you initially said the protocol initially was 30%.
Yeah, you've changed there.
Yeah, because so
symptom. That's the point. He's dealing with symptom.
No, but it would be so unfair to say that there has been nothing that has been done about it. Obviously, I mean the whole intent, the idea, granted that even the committee which investigated internally last year even did nothing. The whole intent of even instituting a committee itself is symbolic that somebody, some way, somehow wants to address the challenge.
Yeah, but it's
hold on. Let me
when you set up a committee and not follow up on the committee's recommendations. That is even more problematic.
Is that the conclusion? Because
because if you set up a committee,
I am giving you an update of the committee. Then you are concluding on. I gave you an update.
Yes.
That we have a report that is ready.
No, but based on what you said the mere fact that you set up a committee, we should applaud.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that
there's a commitment.
No, I am saying that you cannot also rule that out. That is in direct response to what you said, that nothing has been done about it.
I actually applauded that because the impression was created publicly that the BNI processes and then
terminated and nothing else happened.
Truncated.
Yeah.
But I was happy that the National Security Minister took an interest, culminating in this committee, which is a good move.
Yeah.
And the National Security is not a creation of the Ministry of Education. It's an entity on its own, which largely controls all the security apparatus within the country. Yeah. So at best, you can, at best, you can even best describe that.
But I guess
the investigation was escalated.
The focus of all of us here is the result of all this investigation and that's all we are focusing on.
Obviously.
It means nothing when you set up a committee that doesn't solve the problem.
No, obviously.
That's the question to you.
Obviously. But first of all, you need to understand the problem. What is the problem?
Yeah, but that's the problem. I think for everybody that I think clear.
No.
Everybody understand what the problem is. Manasseh has told you. Your committee has told you. The investigation has told you.
You see, until you give an opportunity for Ghanaians to understand the problem, I mean, everybody will jump into the conclusion like what you are doing. That if you have access, it means that.
So I give it the opportunity to say.
But you can't interrupt me. So allow me to land.
So go there because of time.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it about
because
the
of time? So let me flow.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that if you look at the CSSPS arrangement, you have what you call automatic placement. You also have what you call the self-placement. You have the manual placement and also the protocol regime, which is also part of the entire policy of the CSSPS. Now, I'm going to restrict myself to the protocol because that is what is in contention now. And I mean, let me make an emphatic statement. Until and unless probably, as all of us as stakeholders, including Kofi, including yourself, we say no, that, well, we are doing away with the protocol system.
Is the protocol in contention? I don't think so.
But you see, it is a protocol that is giving birth to others. You cannot.
I don't
out of nothing comes. It's a basic principle. Can I land respectfully? No, that's my opinion.
Yeah, but that opinion can be flawed.
Perfect. Unless you raise a superior argument, it's not just by rhetoric.
Because the other parts of go on. You go on.
You ask a question.
So you believe it's a protocol?
No, I am saying that within the protocol arrangement, you have the Ministry of Education controlling 5% and the schools also having 5%. Nominally, you may place about 20 to 25 slots on them. So, for instance, you have Opoku with about 20 slots, where the ministry has opportunity to also assess needy and underserved students who ordinarily may have a very genuine special case, helping about 10 of them. The schools may also, I mean, you are aware the schools, their PTA, the board, sometimes the church, we build the schools, have been supporting the school, may also have their 10%. Evans, if we're sitting here, you go to your, for instance, Presec Legon, and go and meet the management of Presec and make a case for a young girl whose parents probably have seen you. That, well, I mean, this is a young girl with special issues. Please kindly post this. Hold on, let me land.
The slots being sold, are those slots given?
No,
for
I am giving you the possibility that within this chain of trying to secure protocol for individuals, there is a possibility
that somebody will be selling that slot.
Yes, so what it means is that the person will make you a Goro boy, then you make Kwesi Kwachi a Goro boy, and then Kwesi Kwachi then in turn makes the minister a Goro boy. You cannot say that because just the minister have access, it means that the minister is a Goro boy. Yes, but
that is why
if you look at this level, yes,
that's why our efforts, all of us, our efforts are required to track down the person at the school level.
Nobody disputes that. But it will be so unfair. If you look at how the architecture and the framework of this whole conversation is made to look like if you have the access, and anything go wrong. No, but that's what if I say go and push it.
No, but nobody has pushed it. That's what I've been speaking.
If the school sells a protocol slot,
yeah,
a school sells a protocol slot.
It may not even come from the school. Somebody could walk to the minister straight, and make a genuine case.
What I'm saying is that the school can sell a protocol. Someone at the school level can sell their protocol slot for cash, and then the change will be done at the top.
How are you supposed to know?
The guy at the top may not know.
Exactly.
It is only through an investigation.
Perfect.
So we are open for it.
Which we are open for it.
So
that's why I commended Manasseh in the first place. I commended him.
We just have a minute to wrap up now.
That's why I commended Manasseh here.
So you've explained it. So let's quickly. So what is going to happen now?
With regards to
what has happened, first of all, the minister has hold on to a report, so that's one. Manasseh has come. So what is going to happen now?
That's what I'm saying, that obviously at this stage, what the ministry can do is to still liaise with institutions like you, people like Manasseh, use their model to still address the basic challenges within, and of course also liaise with state and relevant institutions. It's just like broadly asking me that.
I get it. So specifically though, you have to nail it down. It's what is the minister from tomorrow? What is the minister doing differently to address the problem?
I think what the minister is, the minister already has spoken on the matter.
Yeah.
The minister spoke before the documentary was aired. So
he didn't watch it. He himself said he didn't watch it. You have watched.
Yeah.
He said in the interview, to be fair to him,
he hasn't watched.
I haven't watched it. So he was talking in general terms. So that's what I'm asking you. No, he said that.
I'm not.
So specifically from tomorrow, now you've watched. You've watched. He's watched. Yeah. I'm assuming he's watched. He hasn't watched.
No, I'm not sure it is the documentary that is really pushing anybody to do anything.
No. That's all. I'm just asking a question from tomorrow or going forward. What is going to change?
It's a leading question of which I'm not going to answer the way you like. Even before the documentary.
So what is changed? What has changed?
That's what I'm telling you. Even before.
Take the documentary out of the equation.
Hold on.
What has changed? What has changed?
What has changed is that even before the documentary, the ministry has again cautioned parents on the whole.
Yeah, after caution, we've cautioned. I mean, that doesn't change anything.
That's what I made an emphatic statement.
Yes.
That first of all, if you want to.
No, but look, I don't have time. Ask for caution, we've cautioned. I'm talking about beyond caution. What has happened? What has changed?
Of course, we have a report that we are also going to look at, and all consequential decisions will also be taken from there.
Okay. I need to wrap up, but let me get apart because it's the committee. I need to get apart because Dr. Clement Apart, you are in Parliament. You have a lot of power and authority. What will change? What will you do from your end?
Well, clearly, now that we have something captured on video indicating that the complaints we have been receiving are actually true. I believe that the committee, when we resume, would make it an agenda item for us to also deliberate and see what ought to be done.
Okay.
I think
30 seconds.
Yeah, I think the minister should facilitate a meeting between the fourth estate investigative team and then the investigative bodies that the committee was working with. Okay. And then they bring the evidence they have, the fourth estate evidence they have, they bring it together to see how they can aid in that process. The investigation may have ended, but new information would help this investigative body, which the National Security Minister has an interest in, to pursue it further.
I think I made.
And then also, I expect the Minister of Education to immediately make the report of the committee public. It is not necessary for anyone to do an ITR request because I don't see any reason why the Minister of Education is interested in making that report. And then finally, the ministry should also appraise the public on steps they have taken, okay, as a result of the committee's report since the report
came to them.
So that
thank you
all.
thank you very much.
But to be fair to me, I commended Manasseh's work. And I even said that we are going to study it.
Yes, and take action.
Improve whatever we are doing.
We agree with you. But you promise that the report will be published. Enjoy the rest of your evening.